Good evening and welcome to Gana Short. Gana Short में आप सबका स्वागत है. Today we're going to talk of something very interesting. Has Park learned its lessons? It's a tough question because in 70 odd years of its existence, it has not learned any good lessons. It has learned all bad lessons. But we'll still make a try, a valiant try, right? And uh, to discuss this and see what lessons they could have learned or should have learned or will not learn. Uh, Air Marshal Diptendu Choudhury, General Dua, General Gautam Moorthy, and shortly General Vinod Bhatia and General Ata Hasnain will join. They will join as we go along. We've seen the past 1 week, 10 days has been hectic. And I think India has gone through 4 days of, warfare. I'll call it a war. It was nothing less than a war, right? Where I think India has come of age. These are defining moments in our nation's history. As I was just discussing with Air Marshal Chaudhary, in the history of the world, there is no other time or no other nation has taken on two nuclear adversaries. We took on the first nuclear adversary called Pakistan in 99 and we defeated them soundly. We also took on China in 2020 when they came on in Eastern Ladakh. And we, gave them a, black face or a black eye in when we did that operation on Kailash range. And that started a reversal of China, which is now culminated in their stepping back after 4 years. You can talk what you want, right? And now what you have done actually is not really just give a resounding slap to Pakistan, but I think we've given a resounding slap both to Pakistan and China combined. I think that's what India has achieved. And this is something which we have not yet recognized. The world has not recognized as it. And I'm sure in times to come, this will be discussed. But at this point of time, today, we'll stick to what has happened and we'll question this fact: has Pakistan learned its lessons? And if so, what are the lessons which it has learned or it should have learned? Right. Uh, Today is going to be a long kind of a evening with varied views and very experienced views. All of them have been in battle at one point of time or the other. Uh, to start the ball rolling, I'd request General Satish Dua to get going and to see, because why I'm asking him to get going is he was one of the co-commanders who was part of the surgical strikes post the Uri incident. And he has personal views about it and his personal emotions, which he always wears on his sleeve as far as Uri is concerned. And that has set off something which has culminated in Op Sindoor. So with this kind of a thing, I'd request General Satish Dua, please take it on, and the floor is yours, sir.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Jai Hind, everybody, and Jai Hind, all the viewers. Um,
I'd request
let
all of
me,
you to put others to put their mics off because there's some hiss coming. I don't know which.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is stopped. Right. So I'll begin again. Let me start with the question that you pose, Shankar sir. Has Pakistan learned its lesson? The short answer is no. I don't think they have learned their lesson. They have already announced that they will reconstruct those damaged headquarters. They have given from the IMF loan. I'm sorry for chuckling, but they have actually given 14 crores to Masoor Azad because of he lost 14 members of his family, uh, and things like that. So I don't think it will be premature of us to start just because we we had decisive strikes. We caused a lot of damage, and they asked us for a ceasefire after 4 days of back and forth of military strikes. Uh, I don't think they are going to stop their support to terrorism. But having said that, I'm sure we'll all want to expand on that. And my view is, and allow me 2 or 3 minutes of recap. I'm not going to talk about events. Everyone knows what has happened. All of us have been following. We have been discussing on our group and other groups as well. So the idea is not to do that. But the fact is, like you said, um that India started this with a shallow strike or multiple strikes uh, after the terror attack at Uri. And I mean, I didn't have a ringside view of it. I was in the ring. So, but the fact is, apart from the strikes and killing of terrorists and all, what we did is we tested their nuclear bluff. We call their nuclear bluff. We found a little threshold below we found a little space below the nuclear threshold. When Balakot happened after Pulwama, we went deep inside. It was not a shallow strike, it was deep inside, precision air strikes. And again, we tested the nuclear bluff. But there was a little difference in those two and this one. There were many differences. One that I want to point out, in those two, within a matter of 10 days and 12 days, respectively, India struck. It was a surprise, and we announced after the operation was over. In this case, the CCS met, and the Prime Minister announced, the government announced several diplomatic measures, very harsh ones. We've never used Indus Water Treaty earlier, water as a leverage earlier, and other diplomatic and economic steps were announced. And Prime Minister Modi himself announced to the world, because that famous sentence in English to a population of Bihar was obviously meant for the global audience. He said, "We will strike. The military strike is yet to come." So this time around, we had lost the surprise. As far as he lost the surprise for the military. The Pakistanis knew that we are going to strike. When, where, what mode, they didn't know. But be that as it may, exactly 2 weeks later, after Pahalgam carnage, India struck back decisively all over, all the headquarters. So we, and in Punjab, and I'll not go over the details. Murid K is close to Lahore, and Lahore is also the headquarters, or a base, Chaklala base, close to Islamabad, or the fact that Bawalpur is again a core headquarters and a terror headquarters. So everyone knows that. But we stuck decisively, and in the next 4 days, we know the kind of um, drone warfare and other strikes, missile strikes, air strikes, everything that went on both sides. I I must admit that I was a little skeptical of our integration of air defense resources. How it will stand the test of time. That's my personal view. Also, I was, and I'm sure many of us were skeptical, a little skeptical of how made in India systems will fare in combat. I, on my part, am very happy to be proven wrong on both counts. A fantastic job was done by our integrated air defense system with Air Force firmly in the lead, and uh, the made in India, the Kashtir, the other systems, BrahMos later, all did a fantastic job. And I think we proved our point to Pakistan. I remember hearing I think his name is John Spencer, one of the counter-terrorism specialists. He's written a book on urban warfare. And I heard him on NDTV. The anchor asked, and we were discussing this a little while ago. I was on Barkha show. That the anchor asked him, "Can you point out another instance in the history or in the modern history where in 4 days a country has struck decisively, boldly, and managed to achieve their initial aims, what they set out to do?" And he racked his head and said, "No, there are no other parallels to this." So I think what has happened, and I'm not saying it's over. Operation Sindoor is still on, as the defense minister said. I think it was a very, so far it has been a very decisive action, bold action. But where do we go from here? Before that, I want to talk about a couple of points which are talked less. One, I think apart from the kinetics and the very bold diplomatic, political, economic steps taken, it I in my view, the battle for the mind space or the cognitive thinking is very important. Here, I feel Pakistan has mastered the art of uh, fake narratives, manipulated narratives. We must engage more vigorously, I think, in this space. I was on channel. I was on Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya. Al Arabiya channel. I was speaking to Fawad Choudhury, ex-senator of Pakistan. It was a 55-minute long thing, and I was amazed to see the kind of lies not only they peddle in, but they actually believe in themselves. He kept talking about Hindutva and Hindus are killing Muslims and things like that. They continue to believe in that because that is the narrative they spin out. And I'll just mention later as to what kind of narratives we also must play. But our narrative should be based on credible and truth. We must put out our side well. Um, so, getting back to the point, I think engaging in this perception issue, info warfare, is very important. Now, the other issue I want to bring out is how do we go from here? I mean, what else do we have if we excuse me? So, if like we always say, if you kill a few terrorists, some more will come and take their place. Now we've stuck at headquarters, so we've given out a bold resolve. Correction, a political military synergy was at its best. A bold decision taken by the government, executed well in all different dimensions, including diplomatic and military precision, was there to see. But going forward, if they are going to start with this, if they are going to start with supporting the terror headquarters again, I heard on another discussion somebody said, no, we must now get the TRF also blacklisted, get it designated as a terror headquarter. To my mind, then they will make another franchisee. So things like that will happen. I think we have to, since India has been very bold in so many dimensions, we need to also think differently. And Steve Jobs taught us how to difference between think different and think differently. I think we need to do it different. We have to, for example, I will give you my take. I'm sure others will want to, and we have to think of some out of the box ideas. One, I'm going to list out 3 points before I finish. I think first we need to uh, uh, actualize whatever we talk about in Indus water suspension. To actualize, we need to create capacities. It will take a long time, whether it's a canal or a bund or a check dams or whatever. It will take a long time, but we must do it. We saw the difference that even deregulation of water flow made. The moment Chenab was running dry, we with use of Bagliar and Salal for 3-4 days, and people were walking across the Chenab River. Pakistan Sensex dropped, and so that plays on the sentiment, having an erratic water supply. So we can do something, but we must create more capacities so that we don't want to use it. I'm sure we didn't do it for 3.5 wars and 7 decades earlier because it hurts Pakistani people. But I think the government has realized enough is enough. We can't keep taking this terrorism thing all the time and not give it back to them. So that's one step. I think we need to build on that. The second, if you hit the terror headquarters, they reconstruct, rejuvenate that. Then what do we do? I think, like the Prime Minister said, we need to hit their backers. Who are their backers? The ISI, the army. How can we hit at Pakistan army? I mean, let's not talk about conventional war. We are not talking about LOC strikes. Even if, I mean, I'm just outlandish. Even if you some a general or two are assassinated or targeted. That doesn't stop. That doesn't mean hitting the Pakistan army. So, what I would suggest is we need to make Pakistan army unpopular. We must need to work at it. Pakistan army should become unpopular in their country. It has happened 2 years ago when that Imran Khan PTI riots were going on. For the first time, Pakistan, public has actually broken the gates of cantonment, ransacked the house of corps commander. We all saw it. So it has happened. We should use all the means that we can. Tam, dand, dam, bhed, whatever else it takes, we must continue at that. I am not touching upon the topic of because we are in open. I'm not touching upon the topic of Baloch issue or support to Baloch or to Pashtun issue. And the last thing I want to say, the third one, is we need to mobilize international opinion. To that extent, uh, some very good steps have been taken. It has been announced. I think Shashi Tharoor is leading some team, which will go to some places. Owaisi is leading team. So it is reminiscent of how Mr. Rao sent Vajpayee to the UN many years ago. So these kind of things that are taking place are very good. And the defense minister has already started the conversation going about, can a rogue nation like Pakistan, can it be allowed to have nuclear weapons? Uh, we need we need to continue with such conversations around the world to mobilize more opinion. Will it make a difference? Will IAE come into it so soon or not? But those are the kind of conversations we need to generate all around the globe. And then I'm sure we'll keep thinking on our feet as the thing progresses. And I know that Operation Sindoor is not stopped. I will only end by showing a mirror. Maybe all of us have seen it or not. During the Uri surgical strike in response to Uri, our Sensex fell because there was a fear that now there will be a conflict between the two countries, and in anticipation, our Sensex fell by I think 700 points or something. This time, when we struck 9 terror bases, hubs, and headquarters, our Sensex in that very day, on the 7th of May, our Sensex gained 500-600 points. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that, and that happened on the back of foreign investors. So what I'm trying to point out there, that when Uri happened 9 years ago, the surgical strike happened 9 years ago, India was not confident that how we will end up. This time, not only India, but also the world, foreign investors was confident that India will have it under control. That sentiment says a lot. This is a new resurgent India, and a new paradigm, new red lines are being drawn and executed well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gen Dua. I think the three main points which you made, uh, actualize Indus Water Treaty abeyance through capacity building. Second point, I think it is very important, reconstruction of terror infrastructure and handling that in a different manner, because the way it will come back at us is not going to be the same as it has been so far. You dismantled it, something new will come up. The third thing is, of course, make army unpopular. That's part of a cognitive campaign which we have to start. We have to start our own cognitive campaign and combine it with the fact that you have to mobilize international opinion. I think it's a tough ask for us, to be very honest, because we have never not been very good at this a new phase of cognitive warfare which you're talking about, a new dimension. But all the same, I thought they were very important points. With this, I'll go to General Vinod Bhatia. General Bhatia, sir, your views on what has happened so far, in short, and where do you think we are going with Pakistan? And do you think really Pakistan has learned any lesson? Yours, sir.
Thank you, Ganesh. Thank you, Casa. I go with Gen Satish Dua, my old colleague and friend, and to say that Pakistan learned its lessons in what domain? If we think that Pakistan will change its India policy, its Kashmir policy, because of Sindhu, I don't think it's going to happen. Right? Having said that, let me also say that we have raised the costs of Pakistan and the cost of Pakistan, supporting terror, sponsoring terror, and perpetrating terror in our territories. And going back to surgical strikes post Uri, after the Uri surgical strikes, there will be no terror incident backed by Pakistan outside of J&K. We have to see that, right? So that is one big takeaway from the surgical strikes after that Jabbar Top, precision airstrike Jabbar Top, and I don't call it Balakot, it is Jabbar Top, right? And thereafter now, what we have done. So what has happened is that Pakistan learned lessons, but we have restricted Pakistan's sphere of influence and sphere of activity from the whole of the country to mainly now in Jammu and Kashmir and to Kashmir. Last year it was in the Jammu region, south of Pir Panjal, Riyasi region. But if Pakistan would change India policy, I don't think so. Because India policy, like rightly said, is driven by the Pakistani army. The relevance of the Pakistani army, its political relevance, its economic relevance, its domestic relevance is based on an anti-India stance. Right? So that's not going to change. But what is going to change is that Pakistan will now recognize the red lines, it will factor in the red lines of terror attacks, and it will now be again measure terror attacks. I don't think now that we'll see the type of attacks we saw prior to 2016 or even now. But the terror infrastructure will remain, it will be reinforced, and Pakistan will come back because let us understand, easier said than done to degrade the image of the Pakistani army. Because every nation respects its army, whatever it is, whatever it may be. You cannot take away the patriotism out of any people. And that patriotism, the face of the patriotism is the armed forces. Even in our country today, suddenly you find that the value of the armed forces has gone up. You switch on your TV, you switch on radio. Everyone is talking about the armed forces. How they listen to. When I was going listening to one of the music stations, he says we are enjoying the music because the armed forces are deployed. So the same thing is applicable out there. The Operation Sindoor, sharp, swift, surgical, achieved its aims, and we forced Pakistan to come back and ask for cessation of hostilities. Right? 9 targets, well chosen, terrorist training camps, not training camps, sorry, terrorist camps actually, terrorist hideouts, terrorist headquarters, as far away as Bawalpur, Guridke, Muzaffarabad, not only at tactical depth, not at the operational depth, at the strategic depth. And thereafter, what happens? They try to do something, we guard ourselves. And then the turning point was, like rightly said, taking out the air defense of Pakistan. When the air defense cover is taken off in those 90 minutes with the 11 strikes, right? So what happens? Pakistan is left naked. We can then hit Pakistan at any point of time, at anywhere, in any form, in any quantum, in any quality. And Pakistan is forced to come to India and to seek for cessation of hostilities, which we have given, which is rightly so. A lot of people saying, why should we have? We should have. Because India was on control of the escalation ladder. Now, we have done this operation, please understand this, and like Gen Dua brought out, without strategic surprise. We have done this operation without operational surprise. We have conducted this operation without tactical surprise. Unlike Uri, we had surgical strategic surprise, operational strike, tactical surprise. In Jabbar Top operations, again we had surprise because we chose a target into Pakistan. They didn't expect that. But this time they expected everything. We had gone on record that we will strike you. You have to pay for it. And this is where I think we should respect the armed forces, having been a student of military history, studying wars all over. I think the world will be studying this short, swift action of ours. Well integrated, well joined, and what the Air Force achieved, what the Army Air Defense has achieved, what the armed forces achieved, in the planning execution, I think we should salute them, and as a nation, as people, we should be very proud of them. Right now, coming down to what we need to do. The India challenge is to change Pakistan's behavior in the mid to long term. Now, how do we do it? We need a strategy for it. The strategy has to be 9+2 in the diplomatic domain, informational domain, military domain, economic domain, political domain, and the cultural domain. Let's not forget that. +2 is very important again. Right? And for this we need strategy. We need to strategize. As a military man, let me give you a military strategy. The military strategy, as enunciated and as practiced, it may not enunciated as practice is proactive, preemptive, and punitive. The 3 Ps, as we call it. And that's what we exactly done. These operations were both preemptive and punitive. Then we went, the proactive strategy, what we call the cold start doctrine, what Pakistan calls the cold start doctrine, what the proactive strategy has to be further refined, and it cannot be everything go in one go. Because you have to shape the public opinion, you have to shape the international opinion, diplomacy is coming. And one of the major lessons learned is the synergy between the politico-military level, the politico-military will, right? It involved a political end state, and that is what was given to the military, and the military capabilities they trusted that. So we'll have to look at the higher directions coming into the synergy of the political military. And one of the things I would say and recommend in this is that, and through when I shot Casa, I think it's a very important recommendation as far as I'm concerned. The CCS was meeting, I think, yesterday. If the CCS is meeting, the 3 chiefs and the CDS should be special invitees. They should sit in, non-speaking members of the CCS, but they should sit in and listen. Okay, this is one of the major recommendations because that is there. I think this time the clarity was there. This is the political end state required. This is the military actions required, and there's synergy between the two, which has been lacking for quite some time. Actually, General Dua will tell us that during surgical strike it was there. Definitely, it was there, but that was a limited one when we everything. This time we didn't have anything. The next thing, Make in India is not even covered. Cognitive domain has been covered. Yes, we done. Let me say we've not done badly. Actually, we've not done badly. We may not done well, but we've not done badly. So I would give it still, pass marks. We need to do better, and we need system and structures for IW. That's very important. We do not have system structures. If we do not have system structures, you think Doordarshan, largest network of television stations in every language. Have we exploited that? No. We cannot stop the media hype, the media halla, which is actually negative at times. Okay, because it raises expectation of the public. The public sentiment had to be assuaged. It was assuaged. But today the public is saying, no, why should we not go to war? It's not easy going to war. And out here, I quote Prime Minister Vajpayee. He made a great statement. He said after the parliament attack, because parliament attack was an attack on a flag. He said, "Aar paar ki ladai karenge." We would know of Prakram. And after 6-7 months, someone asked him, कि प्रधानमंत्री जी आप तो आर पार लड़ाई कर रहे थे क्यों नहीं शुरू करते लड़ाई इसे लड़ाई तो मैं आज शुरू कर दूं खत्म कैसे करनी मुझे पता नहीं so we'll have to tell our people that what was the aim and objectives of Sindoor which we achieved. So that is important because public sentiment is important, public opinion is important, and psychological operations with Pakistan is important, as is the international environment. One more thing which is a major thing which has come out of this is that the nuclear overhang, the nuclear blackmail, the nuclear rhetoric, that factor has been now totally done away with. And the Prime Minister's statement categorical on this. So we told Pakistan, nuclear, non-nuclear, zero tolerance for terror. So when we talk of terror, we got to talk basically hitting out at Pakistan, raising the cost and costing of Pakistan all over again. And for this now, the armed forces have to rethink the options available. Every time you have to upgrade the options. When you upgrade the options, you upgrade the capabilities. When you upgrade the capabilities, you have to procure things. And for that, you need budgets. You need monies. I believe, it is said that 50,000 crore is given. But given that India's threats are defined and definite, I think GDP of 1.9% is too little. And not only too little, it is not only optimally utilized also. The utilization should be with the right people. The power to utilize them should be with the armed forces. We have DSC going on. Very fine. The Defense Acquisition Council, lot of it. But someone has to do an audit. How many projects were sanctioned and how many projects were fructified over the last 10, 11 years, or even 20 years for that matter. Right? So we have to get our systems right, because this threat is not going away anywhere. If we think that just because of Sindoor, Pakistan will stop it, will change its policy, it's not going to change the policy. And the expectation of the public is every time there is a terror attack, irrespective of how many casualties, I think we should go ahead with Pakistan. And politically, I don't know whether it's acceptable or not. So we'll have to look at small things. Uh, Also, of course, we need to look inwards also. It is not only Pakistan. I think we'll have to look at Kashmir again. If you look at Kashmir since 2019, things change. Quran Wani is no longer a factor. There was a time when there was stone pelting. There was a time when we used to, count people, thousands coming for, unka jab janaja nikalta, well, thousands. The streets were full, the schools were closed, the markets are closed, the complete population was out. There's nothing you could do. So things were really bad. But what has happened now? You don't see people coming out. Schools are open. Srinagar and Kashmir were teeming with tourists. You couldn't find a parking place anywhere. Right? Now things have changed again. Economic development is very important. Now we want to make sure and look inwards, and we should, and what I call for Kashmir inwards is 4E strategy: education, economic development, employment generation, and empathy for the people of Kashmir. A lot of Kashmiri students who were studying outside had to rush back because they were not secure outside. So that our people have to understand that we have to look after. They are our people. We have to look after them. Right? So this has to be all over India. It's not only Kashmir. So I think, again, referring to General Dua, of course, he's an expert on this thing. He's also the color regiment of Jackalai, and a very popular figure in Kashmir. Look at the amount of youth who come for recruitment to the Jackalai Center. That is an indicator. Look at the amount of people, youth who come for recruitment into the police, into the government jobs, right? That is the indicator. And that is where we've got to build upon and not treat everyone as a terrorist. Retribution ops should be there, should be targeted. So I'll end out here, and we should look at ceasefire. This is cessation of hostility, not ceasefire. We should remain on our guard. Things can change anytime, and we should continue with this and clear signal around to Pakistan that you do anything, the cost have to be raised, the cost will be raised. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. You spoke a lot of things, but I will sum it up in just one point. I think that's the major point which you made, and I'll define it. If you see the history of India-Pakistan, conflicts and fights and all that, we conduct anti-terrorist operations, but eventually go up. The Pakistan talks of Kashmir. They conflate terror and Kashmir. And that's the way it ultimately gets projected in the international media, which everyone says, look, India and Pakistan keep fighting over Kashmir. How do disaggregate these two and deal with them is going to be our future problem. And for that, like you rightly said, you have to look inwards at Kashmir differently so that the Kashmir factor is out of the terror equation. And you have to handle terror differently because it's going to come back at you. The shape, size, and form factor and the location factor might change, but it's going to come back at you. I think that's the major sense which I got out of what you said. Right. Uh, Having heard two, hardcore army professionals, I'll now turn to the thing in the air. And for the first time in India's history, we saw an Air Force doing something completely different. And I'll define it before I start. And I mean, I'm sure Air Marshal Choudhury will elucidate on this and the impact it has on Pakistan and what Pakistan will learn from that. It is this: over a period of 72 hours, 3 days, our air power switched from hitting terrorist targets. Second day, it took out the complete AD of Pakistan, or the AD cover of Pakistan. And on the third day, it took out the complete, air capability, or it paralyzed the air capability of Pakistan ability to hit back. I think I don't know whether in the history of warfare we've had this kind of a capability demonstration in any war. It showed a tremendous amount of synergy between forces, and which was never seen so far if you leave 71 out. And with this as a preamble, I'd request Marshal Dityendra Chaudhary, sir, please, your views. And more importantly, what do you think? How do you think Pakistan Air Force will evolve after this?
Thank you very much, General Shankar. The outset, I must thank General Shankar and General Moorthy for involving me in this CAS and gunner shot seminar. I think in the lighter vein, I think it's a bit of a blue moon event. I think first time air power is getting airtime.
Air power is getting airborne. Oh, air power is getting airborne.
Thank you for that, sir. But
Completely.
I'll
Yeah.
before absolutely, sir. So I'll just give a little more context to this whole air power aspects without getting into the specifics, like was brought out. The specific details are out available in the open, but I'll give some background context. The history of Indian air power employment, especially offensive air power, has been a story of restraint and constraint from 1947, 1962. 65, we were also restrained because we couldn't go in, carry out preemptives, despite we couldn't hit their airfields till we got a clearance much later. Plus, we had to divide our forces between the Eastern threat, possibility of a Chinese threat. And even in 1999, we were constrained from going across. It's only in 1971 did we truly see the last full-fledged employment of offensive air power. So my argument at this point will start with one fact that, possibly the offensive employment of air power is something we last saw 54 years ago in 1971. And we got a little glimpse of it in 1999, which itself was 26 years ago. So I think it slipped a little in its, the salience of offensive air power probably slipped over in our national security matrix. So that is where I begin from. And it was brought out, Uri and Balakot were the sort of stepping stones where to build up to this action. But Uri and Balakot were single service approaches. Though as was brought out by General Dua, I think all the details of how we went about it. But what is very interesting is that this time around, it was the first inclusion of offensive air power in a nation's response matrix in a very firm and what should I say, in a stated manner. In the first instance, we had hit only one target. This time, hit 9 targets. So the scale is immense. I mean, it's actually 9 times. And this, I don't need to remind you all, was out of 21 targets. So I most certainly, those 21 targets would have been assessed and factored in and gamed. And 9 would have been chosen based on intel. So the sheer planning is mind-boggling. So that is the first important thing. I think the first strike on which was carried out was to hit decisively and accurately under a nuclear umbrella. It was also led to one of the largest probably air engagements. For the sheer number of platforms in the air, I don't think has been seen anywhere in modern air power in a very, very long time. And it's actually a lot of international air power experts have sat up and looked at this whole thing with surprise. Ability to hit hard with precision and stand off within the rubric of a no war, no peace situation in peacetime. That means using air power offensively as a stated response matrix has come to stay possibly in our and this is a very new inclusion in our response matrix from a national perspective, and that is something we need to bear in mind. And it was used I think extremely well. I'm saying the way it was calibrated and employed within the nuclear threshold, but well within the new escalation matrix. And what was interesting is that, where we have seen uh, the whole second strike, which came as out of PAF's desperation when they hit our front bases, our front airfields. Technically, if you look at it, they're all military targets. Unlike the past, when we always considered a military target as an army target, but if you hit an airfield, technically it's a military target. It's cause for escalation. It's a serious cause for escalation, and I think the government looked at it that way, and possibly that's why gave the go ahead for us to hit back equally harder on their air bases. And boy, that was really, I think, frankly, even I was quite surprised at the scale of targeting which we took place right from Skardu all the way down to Malir Kant across a distance of, I think, close to, I mean, if I get my maths right, over, I think, 1,400 kilometers of straight aerial distance, if we just look at it. So the sheer spread, stretch, and depth, as General Bhatia brought out, we hit
Yeah, we just lost him. We'll just wait for a minute. Yeah, okay. Look, let me continue what he was.
possibly doesn't
Yeah.
know that he's out. His
Uh,
this thing is fake.
oh, I'm sure he knows
Okay.
because it's this thing. Anyway, let me just continue with what he was saying. You know, I think for the first time in our own history, air power has been employed in such a unrestrained manner. We've never been able to do it this way. And it's not only unrestrained, we've been able to do it in a completely, how shall I say, different shade of employment. And for the first time, it is not only using air power in the strict sense of, fighter aircraft, but we use all assets. UAVs, satellites. Yeah, he's come back. Let me get him in. Okay.
am
Yeah.
I audible, sir?
No, yeah, you're audible. You can continue from where you left off.
Okay. So apologies. I think we've.
No problems. These things happen. These things happen. Yeah.
Okay.
It is not Pakistan Info War.
No, absolutely. Then what happened was in the second strike and in the sheer span and but the targeting was the critical aspect. Every target hit was a center of gravity in some form of manner of the Pakistani Air Force, and that was something very interesting. And what showed up was the ability to go against the PAF's core competence. PAF has, for long has said that they are the defenders of the, of the airspace of the country. And that is something which I think we showed through the ability to penetrate their air defense and carry out this without any response from them. And the inability to for the PAF to respond offensively was again, I think, has come out very clearly. I'll talk about this a little later. But in our targeting, while the media has gone to town with it that we have destroyed all these, bases and all that, but it's a little far cry from that. But what we have done is the selective targeting has sent a clear message to the PAF and the Pakistani leadership that look, this is what we are capable of, and this is something that the Indian Air Force has trained for long. That to be able to carry out mass follow-on strikes on target systems like airfields and other air defense infrastructure. This is frankly nothing new. This has been something we've been training for. I think the first time we've had an opportunity to showcase it since 1971. That is something huge. And I'm glad we could achieve that to a great degree. There are a lot of lessons which will come out of it later. But what is the most important aspect is that the message went across to the PF and the Pakistani leadership, our ability to hit them deep inside. And I think that is what worried them, that should this escalate, the scale will be something probably take them down to a line where they will have a very huge difficulty in recovering from the damages caused. Uh, offensive air defense, I think, played a huge role, but this was made possible by our integrated air defense. Now, here, I would like to mention here, this is something which I have been writing about for a long time. Air defense is a misnomer in today's parlance. I think the word defense gives a wrong impression, because air defense actually has become offensive in the sense that you have radars and weapon systems which look well inside the enemy airspace. So effectively, you can target the adversary over his own home spaces. And that is huge, because that changes the entire narrative, and it creates an environment for offensive air power to follow. So rightly speaking, and this is something we in the Air Force have been talking a lot about, that offensive air power and air defense are actually conjoined synergistic twins. You cannot do one without the other, and that is one important aspect I think I would like to bring in here. I'll not get into the details of what is integrated air defense. I think everybody is aware of that. But what brings in an important aspect I want to bring in here is something I've written about in some of my pieces, is that a concept of extended integrated air defense made possible when we first got in the S-400s. And this, I written it about it then, that the range and depth of offensive air defense cover that you get inside enemy airspace actually makes your air defense extended well inside. So it actually allows you enormous operational space and capability well inside in a very offensive manner, unlike the past mindsets which we have traditionally been, that okay, we look at everything from a defensive outlook as a nation. AD integration has been a winner. IAF has been long working on its ISCCS and had mastered it. And in fact, I must make it a point here that we, well before Balakot itself, we had been talking about integration of Army AD radars in the front lines to bring them together to expand the integrated air defense capability so that everybody benefits from it. Instead of zone or core specific AD, if you open it out a little more, it brings in layers and brings in a whole lot of cover, incidental and direct air defense cover. So the only hitch was the ISCCS was or the networking of that. Post Balakot, we did some fair amount of work in integration of sensors and shooters, but I think the maturing of the Akash Tir really made all the difference, because now it could plug in into the larger ISCCS network, and it has become an invaluable aspect on the lower end of the AD scale, which are at much closer ranges, which in 5-10 kilometers within the visual bubble, because you'll appreciate with drones and missiles you can, but smaller drones are incredibly hard to pick up. You'll need different kind of sensors. Radars are not always adequate. And a lot of the engagements which went through in this operation was visual. That is why the older end L-70 guns and the older end AD guns came into huge amount of use. This is something very interesting I must point out. In the Gulf War, one of the major takeaway lessons by the US Air Force at least was always keep a low-tech backup. And this low-tech backup is something we need to bear in mind, especially in our military, because in this tech-driven trajectory that we have seen the speed at which technology gets countered. So a low-tech is something which will always be a fail-safe option, which must bear in mind. Drones and missiles, I will only say, have widened this whole concept of air power employment in the larger scale. It has democratized it. In fact, all kinds of players have got involved. And this is something, while it is not an end in itself, and this is why I want to make this point, that the Ukraine war gave a lot of wrong lessons. People thought it was an end in itself. But I would like to argue that in our defense matrix and the kind of adversaries that we have, every weapon system, old, new, and whatever is available, every bit counts. Every bit must add on to our muscle, military muscle. We should not get, obsessively focused on one end of it or the other end. Most certainly, the critical aspects need development, but we must keep every weapon, proven weapon, with us available handy. Other important point I want to bring out is air defense is not foolproof. Especially, we have seen the limits of drones and missiles to air defense. So this is something I want to bring out, that with two strong air forces across our adversaries, all our airspaces in future will be hostile and highly contested, if not at least contested. And survival of aerial platforms within the tactical battle spaces will be a future challenge which we can't wish away. We must be cognizant of that. I think on the whole, the most important aspect, other aspect on counter UAS systems, it is just the big tip of the iceberg. I don't think I want to jump in with any firm conclusions on it. It is the way to go, but it is a huge challenge because it overlaps both the civilian and the military domain, simply because of peacetime challenges on our borders and wartime challenges which are military specific. So this is something which you need to do a lot of work on. Other aspects on indigenous weapons and all, I will not go into. I think on the whole, we came together brilliantly, both in the civil and military domains. Military domain, most importantly, I think there was I think the higher defense organization worked in the manner it is supposed to. The clear signals which were there from the initial, I think, PM's meeting with the RM and the CDS and the service chiefs set the tone and tenor. So the planning, sequencing, and execution of operations, where all the core competencies of each service was brought on the table, I'm sure, and areas of commonalities were exploited and leveraged. And that is exactly how it should be in future application of force in the future. And even more heartening was the coincidence of the military instrument with all other aspects which were already covered, from the Indus Water Treaty right down to what is even going on now, the IAEA efforts, reaching out to the Taliban. My only point is, we in the past very easily shift focus. I think this is one lesson we must learn, is to keep the strategic pressure on each of these steps and efforts that we have taken, and not go as one for the other. It has to be a comprehensive effort which needs to go on and on. A quick recap on, has Pakistan learned its lessons? The answer is, like everybody else, no, most certainly. But what is important here, I must bring out, there are overt lessons and I think there are inside lessons. Overt lessons, obviously, they have to shape the narrative to their own people, survival, and in international media. They have, obviously, the way it is coming out, they seem to have won this whole encounter. But I think within the PAF military, and especially in the PAF, a lot of lessons have been learned by them. And this is something what is very important, because for the first time, PAF has lost credibility within its own people to a great extent, and with the Pakistani military. And this is something which has always been there. Unlike India, the Pakistani army has always distrusted the Pak Air Force. They had come together with great synergy, and I know for first-hand inputs, because the PAF chief happened to be an RCDS coursemate of mine. He is very close to the Pakistani army chief, and they have, I think, synergistically done a lot of hand holding to bring in Chinese inputs and efforts into their domain. But the most important thing is, PAF has lost a fair amount of credibility, and this is something they will note. They will most certainly look at all the gaps which have been created and which have been found, which we have leveraged on from our side. And I think the PLAF and China is watching this very, very closely, simply because this has been the proving ground for the Chinese aviation industry, and they've been working hard to leverage it and to capitalize on it, but they have learned the lessons. And my only worry is that the speed at which the PLF reacts to this, and the speed at which they'll fill their gaps, I think, is something we need to be worried about, because they will be much faster than, I think, the way our industry reacts, and way we fill our credibility gaps. The offensive defense approach of the PAF and the Pakistani military which was a stated policy. I think that is the weakness in that has been clearly brought out, and it has obviously failed. Integration of their Chinese weapon systems has not been totally a success story. There have been huge gaps in it. But what I want to underscore here for future occasions is the PAF and PLAF collusion is only going to increase tremendously. This is something I've been tracking for a very long time, and I'm going to continue doing this because this is something which they will leverage hugely on, especially the PLF, because the US Air Force today looks at PLAF with a growing concern. And the PLF will want to fill those capability gaps and capacity gaps to retain its initiative. So PAF and PLAF lessons will directly impact our future military strategy, both in the continental and maritime domain. So I cannot overemphasize this and the need to fill our capability gaps, but that's entirely another story. What is interesting and I think heartening is that air power, especially offensive air power, has come back firmly into our military strategy, and not just from the what it was in the conventional domain, but also in the lower end of the spectrum in the sub-conventional gray zone domain. It has become a response, important aspect in the response matrix. So I leave it with that, and I think 2-3 quick takeaways would be that there's a, I think, a drastic shift in our defensive orientation of the past. We have always been, our military strategies, everything has been, the first step has been defense. Our outlook has been defensive. I think there's a beginnings of an offensive outlook, which of taking the fight to the enemy. I think this is something which must be nurtured in our military thinking amongst the younger generation as well. And I think the biggest success story has been the joint approach, which I can't overemphasize on. I think I'll end here, give the others a fair chance at it.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you made a lot of points, but my two biggest takeaways from this whole story, which you have put across, and each is very valuable, is the scale of offensive air war which you have undertaken and the transfer of this air offensive into enemy territory, I think is unprecedented in our history. And we have a lot to learn. And conversely, on this, we will have to watch out for this business of PAF and PLAF, how they'll come back at us. The second thing I think, which is very important, which is my firm conviction, which I've been talking of at every forum, is the best technology is that which wins you the war. It's not the latest technology or the costliest technology.
Absolutely.
So in that context, the value of legacy systems is very, very important. And I cannot but take my mind back to the Falklands War. When the Britishers went and did their expeditionary thing in Falklands War, and they landed on the Malvinas, they found that they didn't have electricity. As a result, their complete, there at that point of time, their communication systems and command and control systems failed. So they had to get back to legacy systems. And that is something which we saw in this. Legacy systems has won a lot of good things for us. Okay. Having spoken so far, I'd like to welcome Gen Ata Hasnain. He's come in. I'd like you to speak in the end, sir, so that you get the feel of what all we have been speaking of. I'm glad you could hear General Air Marshal Choudhury speaking. I now request General Gautam Moorthy. So, you please tell us what do you think are the outcomes of this whole story? And
Satish wants to comment, I think, for a minute.
Yeah, Satish, tell
No,
me.
Sir, I actually want to take
You have to
leave. As I
leave.
told you earlier, I
Yeah.
have to leave.
Your
And
final
then, like,
thoughts before you
in
go.
no,
Your final
no,
thoughts before you go.
okay, I have already got my time to speak, but thank you very much, Dityendu, for what you told us. As I also said in my intervention, I mean, Air Force firmly in the saddle. The integrated air defense grid that we put out and used all the platforms in both services, all three services, perhaps. That was, I said, I was skeptical myself, but happy to be proven wrong. And also the Make in India thing. So Make in India, the legacy systems, everything worked so well. Thank you very much. And before I leave, on a lighter note, now Ata's sir is here, so 115 Corps commander must be before the other one comes.
Okay.
Jain,
Yeah.
Jain sir.
Thanks a lot, Gen Dua. Thanks a
Thank you, sir.
lot for your valuable
Thank you.
views.
I will catch
Uh,
the rest of the discussion online later, including the listeners.
yeah,
Thank you,
fine.
sir.
Thank you. General Gautam Moorthy, sir, all yours, your views.
Uh, Good evening, General Shankar. Good evening, fellow panelists. Good evening, viewers, and welcome again to this Casa Gunner Shot webinar. We have just heard three marvelous expositions from General Dua, General Bhatia, and Air Marshal Choudhury. This 80-hour war between, and it is a war, an undeclared war, but it is nothing short of a war, drew to an abrupt end when India actually agreed to ceasefire on Pakistan's request, notwithstanding the fact that Mr. Trump claimed credit for it. And as was brought out, the war was fought in four dimensions. General Bhatia brought out the fifth, the kinetic, info war, diplomatic, economic, political, rather the sixth, and the cultural dimension. All right, so in the political dimension, while India claimed the credit for hitting deep into Pak territory, and we have brought out that this is the new normal, will be a strong kinetic action response to any terrorist act. The Pak leadership hasn't actually learned any lesson. On the contrary, it has accused, the Pak political leadership has accused India of reckless and rash action. And Pakistan military, which is very much in charge, has actually miscalculated strategically yet again by directly ordering this terrorist act to deliberately inflame communal passions. Now, I'm happy that General Hasnain could join us, and General Hasnain has often said, and I'd like to quote him, sir, with your permission, that Pakistan's plans are tactically brilliant, but strategically they are a failure. You've said that repeatedly, and this is yet again when they've tried to use a terrorist action connected with General Asim Munir's speech, connected with the orders that he gave, connected with what is on social media, where even the ISI people have apparently or had apparently told General Munir that this is fraught with danger, but yet he went ahead and ordered not just a terrorist act, but a terrorist act intended to inflame communal passions in India. And he has failed miserably. So, tactically, he may have thought it was a brilliant action, but total failure miserably. Have they learned a lesson from this? We will see. Now, as my esteemed colleagues have brought out, the information war is on. Information war is on in a very big scale. And information war, along with the diplomatic assertions. Many in India felt that we were on the back foot over here, but I think with the recent initiative and sending out teams, with getting the opposition leaders, and it is marvelous that all of India stood as one. I think Pakistan needs to learn a lesson from that. They right now, as General Bhatia very correctly brought out about their patriotism, they will back the army. The point is that this action maybe, or rather not maybe, I think would be drawing the right conclusions, that one of the reasons that General Asim Munir went in for this was the Pakistani army was deeply unpopular, and we have seen how they manipulated the elections. They are in power, and they were using draconian force, not only with the civil population within the army. He has used Section 199 to great effect, which is a section that was brought out much later, Army Act, under which you could sack any officer, any member of the armed forces without any reason, not even a show cause notice. So this deeply unpopular Pakistan army has got a shot in its arm. Personally, it has cemented General Munir's hold on the Pakistan polity. Now, will the Pakistani polity learn a lesson? Will they continue to let this new avatar of Ziaul Haq continue for 4 years, 5 years, because his term ought to be getting over? That is left to be seen. But he has injected Pakistan polity with a fresh dose of communalism. Talking about the two-nation theory and everything else, General Ata will, I suppose, speak more on it, and how he has backing radical Islamists as against the common Muslim. Now, we have seen military cooperation with China and Turkey. We are deeply disappointed with the actions of both these countries. But we have got to face facts. There is very deep integration with the Chinese industrial base, especially in air defense in the hinterland. However, if there's a silver cloud to this lining, it is their deteriorating relationship with the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, which is deeply, deeply worrisome for Pakistan. It is a huge strategic setback for Pakistan that the Afghan regime is making communication with India, and India is continuing with its projects in Afghanistan, and everything is on track. They are obviously deeply disappointed with this. What they once thought was strategic depth is turned out to be a strategic dud for them. On the question of Balochistan, I'm afraid India must disabuse the lie that is being spread around. And I've been watching Pakistani commentators in the last few days. They are spreading around that this action has been taken place before because India was responsible for the hijacking of the Jafar Express. Now, we all know India had no role to play in it, but yet Pakistanis believe that they were justified in this terror attack in Pahalgam because of the Jafar Express. Now, India needs to disabuse this notion of theirs and push in whatever we can to ensure that this is done. Will Pakistan learn a lesson? Will they continue to use terrorist groups against India? We've recently seen just 2 days ago the famous Difa-e-Watan Council meeting in Karachi, where 40 of these so-called radical groups got together and saying that we will continue with this war with India. And if one sensible voice from Pakistan, but not in Pakistan, is Mr. Hussein Haqqani, former ambassador to the United States. He says that these groups fuel conflict with India. They undermine Pakistan's standing and is dangerous for Pakistan itself. I think there's some phone off, please. Could someone switch it off?
Sorry, boss, you're okay. Yeah.
Okay, this is strategic for you. Now, Pakistan's information war.
Your voice is resounding. You may just come on mute and unmute yourself. Mute yourself and unmute again.
You see, this is happening because somebody has got the phone on.
No, no phone on. Just carry on.
Okay, so I'll quickly finish. So they're tom-tomming defeat as victory. They've done it in 48, 65. Even in 71, their people did not know till the actual surrender that they were losing in East Pakistan. So Pakistan will use its diplomatic leverage to the maximum. It will try and stabilize this military situation that they've gone into. And on Indus Water Treaty, it's a tough ask for them. Let us see how this proceeds. And last but not the least, I completely agree with my fellow panelists in the sense that Pakistan, in some will draw all the wrong lessons from what has just happened from Operation Sindhu. Thank you very much, General Shankar.
Thanks a lot. So very important points you made. I think the most important points are Pakistan is a tactical success always, brilliant, but hugely a strategic failure. That's the character of the Pakistan.
The General Hasnain's point, actually, I just borrowed it.
You made it right. I always give
I think there's cyber intervention on the Gunner Shot Casa channel. It has never happened earlier.
Yeah.
So,
when Pakistan is a first half army, it scored well in the first half, and by the time it comes to the second half, it came. Can you hear me?
There's something wrong with the audio. It's going on.
There's something wrong with the audio. I think you're being targeted.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's what is happening. there is a deliberate interference being done. One idea would be to all of us to switch off and all of us to switch on within the next 1 minute.
Yeah,
Okay, sir.
I think so.
Come back.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
So your voice is distorted.
Okay, let me also switch off. 1 minute. Yeah.
Am
Can you hear me
I?
now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's not
you're
improved.
completely audible. You're completely audible. You're completely audible. We just wait for the others to come in.
Are we audible now?
Yes, you're audible. Can all of you hear me?
Vinod, can you hear me, Vinod?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir. Not an issue. Okay.
No, but there is
Better now.
still some disturbance.
Okay.
Slightly better.
So what we're talking of is
I'm muting. I request General Bhatia and Marshal also to mute.
Okay, no problem. So don't worry, it'll be okay. Right. So what General Moorthy, the major points which he had brought out was that, Pakistan Army is always a tactical success and a strategic failure. Of course, we correlate from what Gen Hasnain said. It's a very important point. Pakistan Army has always played the first half well. It's the second half which has lost. The second thing is Pakistan Army has always had a history of good narratives. It knows how to build narratives. And that is playing out. And if you see, all their narratives are revolve around their tactical brilliance. This is something which we have to learn how to counter. This is going to go further into this thing. The second important point, I think it's a very important point, is that Asim Munib has externalized this whole story. And everyone, the internal problems of Pakistan are now papered over. The nation has rallied around the army. The army is back in the line.
Sorry, interrupting. You're not clear. Your audio is not clear.
Okay, right. Then
You're not clear. You're under attack.
Okay, no, that's okay. If we are under attack, so be it. It's good. We know where we are. We will still respond, so don't worry. So I'll just switch off and come back.
Your audio is clear. Your audio is not clear.
Okay.
Let General Ata speak. Yeah, please speak.
Yeah. Then Hasnain sir, you take and just get off completely and come back.
Well, can you hear me now? In the sense, am I audible to a better extent?
Yeah.
Okay. That comes from a very good and natural voice, actually. You were supposed to be laughing at that joke. Anyway, the point is, I'm back from a completely different discussion at a very high level. So I am just switching my mind strategically back to Op Sindoor. And for that, I had prepared myself in the day by preparing a small bulleted script. I said because it will be difficult for me to switch from one strategic subject to another strategic subject. So, Jai Hind to everyone, to all our viewers. I am going to reflect primarily on the aspect which has been spelled out in the subject: has Pakistan learnt its lessons from Operation Sindoor? And my short answer is obviously not. And were we expecting them to learn it? That's what my explanation and narrative will be. I would say we are still very early. Things are still unpacking as we are going along. At this time, to go in deep into technologies, into tactical aspects and strategies, etc., may for the public be rather confusing. Leave it to the Air Force. Theirs is, of course, their duty at this stage to explain exactly how they did it. So that aspect is separate. But otherwise, for most of us, I am trying to keep this to more to geopolitical relations between the two nations, etc., and leaving more of tactical and strategic aspects to a later date, perhaps. One thing is clear. The bravado that Pakistan has always displayed, September the 6th, 1965, Victory Day, is being repeated all over again, right? And to that extent, give them the credit that they have gone internationally. There are a number of articles they have put down into the international print media, into the international online media, everywhere, just nobody's business. All of us are missing from there. All of us are missing from there. And the international community is not getting the Indian voice clearly. It's our responsibility now onwards to try and motivate people to actually reach out and start explaining the Indian angle and the Indian point of view. So what was the message which Operation Sindoor was trying to convey to Pakistan? I think it was, the first was that Operation Sindoor was not just a tactical strike, like what happened in the surgical strike, or even what happened in Balakot was an operational level, perhaps, but here is something which was completely strategic. It was calibrated, it was a political military signal, and more could happen. That's the message which is very clear. More could happen. It demonstrated India's capacity to call Pakistan's bluff on escalation. The nuclear umbrella has enough space for response. That has been the message that we wanted to convey clearly. The air and ground-based precision, combined with a very deliberate message, we will not absorb pain silently anymore. That was very clear. And the fact that Pakistan has been baying all this time कि हमारे पास nuclear हथियार है and things like that, for once at last we could convey the message to them that your nuclear weapon is not there to protect you from the kind of actions which you indulge. It was also a psychological move directed more at Rawalpindi, the GHQ, and not at Islamabad, the political headquarters. I think the message was clear. It was more to the deep state than anyone else. So, and it's also, I think, a very clear message that transformation of the Indian military has been successful and is ongoing. We are not saying it's terminated. It's ongoing, but it has been successful. So what were the key takeaways that Pakistan should have picked up here? What I just conveyed to you, what we were trying to convey, what we were trying to communicate. I think lesson one for Pakistan, that India's strategic patience has limits. That old assumption that India won't retaliate for fear of escalation is now past, no longer valid. Also, the fact that the IWT was activated, the issue of the IWT came up as something which was completely off for us all these years. The second lesson, that Pakistan's nuclear shield isn't impenetrable anymore, which I just explained. Lesson three, and very important, hybrid war will invite hybrid response. Don't think that hybrid war will invite always a military response as it happened the last time. This time it was a combination of responses. You can't keep pushing insurgents across the line of control and expect our side to forever play defense. I think Pakistan has got that message quite clearly. Pakistan, however, refuses to internalize these lessons as such, and the reasons for that are quite clear. The army's mindset, or the deep state's mindset, hasn't changed. For Rawalpindi, the strategic hostility with India is its existential raison d'etre. It survives based upon that hostility. And if that hostility dilutes or compromises, as you saw what was happening with General Gautam Moorthy's friend, General Bajwa who was a very good friend of General Moorthy,
When he
he,
went to-
he's the only one who General Moorthy has met in the Pakistan Army, and he knows him, he knew him. So I'm putting it on that front primarily. When General Majwa spoke in the Islamabad dialogue 2 years continuously, every time about the need for reach out to India, the need for resolving the problems if Pakistan wants to progress economically as a nation, etc. Each year he hinted, he spoke, but the issue was never taken beyond. No one had the courage to take it beyond, and I think even Bajwa finally chickened out. Their grip on the national narrative, that's the Pakistan Army's grip on the national narrative, the foreign policy, and the security, means no pivot is possible unless the military itself wants it. That is clear. The Thousand Cuts doctrine is just too deeply embedded. 1977 to 1989, it was created. It's not just policy, it is institutionalized as a habit. From Kashmir to Kargil to cross-border terror, this strategy has been Pakistan's go-to for decades. All this while, for the last 36 years, you have only seen the enactment of this policy. Domestic compulsions fuel external hostility. So you find economic collapse, political instability, all that needs a scapegoat to explain to the public, to internally to them themselves. Anti-India rhetoric is a reliable distraction and a rallying point. It should be the reason for them to be looking inwards, but that does not really go to them. A strategic delusion still rules. Many in Pakistan's security establishment believe that bleeding India through proxies is a very cost-effective way to level the playing field. This has gone on from the Zia assumption of 1977. Retribution for what happened. Will that retribution continue for the next 150 years? That is the question that people in Pakistan should ask. And with the West distracted by Gaza, distracted by Trump's tariff wars, but distracted by what's happening with the upcoming ceasefire in Ukraine, all this has been distracting the West. They think the international fallout will be minimal. This is what Pakistan probably assumed. There is so much happening in the world, unlikely that anyone's going to focus on this issue in the subcontinent. Especially if they play the nuclear victim, which was what they were playing. So why will Pakistan continue with the doctrine of 1,000 cuts? That's the question. The question is, asymmetric war is cheap and deniable. Terrorist groups don't cost much. Drug finance is always available. And there is deniability all the time. And they've made this up. They've become the masters of denial. They still think time is on their side as far as Kashmir is concerned. Especially post-2019, they believe that international pressure will mount on India. If you speak to General Bhatia, perhaps he'll explain to you the mindset of the people he meets in these track-2 meetings. Quite clear. They think time is on their side. We can continue this forever. India will not be able to respond. I think that this time we have been able to convey that message a little differently. So they see low-intensity conflict as a way to keep the pot boiling. And that is the one issue that we have to be concerned about in Kashmir as we go along. The international community's response has been completely toothless, as we have seen. Even the Russians haven't been passionate in their support towards us. So, as long as there's no sustained pressure on Rawalpindi, on the GHQ, they will keep gaming this same system, which is why I am assuming that as we go along, it's a matter of time before resumption of almost the same activities will start again. The ground, however, is shifting as far as India is concerned. And this message, I hope Pakistan is realizing. India's internal resilience has grown, be it public sentiment, political will, or military capability. We are not the India of the 90s. We are not the India of the 2010s also. Pakistani society itself is fraying, but the political community in Pakistan is absolutely helpless. The deep state's grip is being challenged, but there's growing disillusionment internally. So what should India do? That's my consumption at the end, the deduction. India should remain unpredictable. That's one of the most important things. Strategic ambiguity is our friend. Don't divulge this through all kinds of discussions, etc. But strategic ambiguity remains our greatest advantage. Keep up the pressure diplomatically, economically, and militarily, which means hybrid is the game. Let Pakistan know the cost of adventurism as they've realized this time. It will be higher as we go along next time and the next time. Expose the truth internationally. That's one of the most important issues I want to bring out. Expose the truth internationally. We have been shy at doing this. We are disorganized in doing this. We haven't been speaking enough. We have not been able to light the fire around the world to tell them what really happened. What was Pahalgam all about? This terrorist issue and the recognition of Pakistan as a terrorist state, unless, as I always say, from Sydney to New York, every strategic capital of the world where strategic studies matter, unless our presence is felt there, this issue is not going to go down to the world. So, last three questions. Has Pakistan learned anything from Operation Sindoor? I would say not really. Will it change course? Very unlikely. I do appreciate that for some time there will be a pullback for a short while, unless we can compel them. But has India shown that we are ready for a new era of deterrence? I would say not completely, but absolutely. But deterrence is a very, very awkward word to use. If at the end of the day, you say you have achieved deterrence and he is still capable of coming back well below the radar and hit you again and again, that deterrence has not really been achieved. And we therefore need to discuss much more as to what we need to do on this particular claim. I think I'll rest my case here and wait for the discussion.
Thanks a lot, sir. The two major takeaways from what you said. You spoke a lot and very relevant. The 1,000 cuts thinking won't run away. More will come, and more will come under the radar, and we need to wait. There will be a pause, but more will come. I think as a nation, we have to be prepared for this. The second thing is hybrid war will invite a hybrid response. And that I think is a very, very, very important issue. And we need to focus on this and build up our hybrid capabilities and with complete strategic ambiguity. If one thing which has come out, if the lesson out of this whole story of 72-hour war, 80-hour war, whatever it is that we've exhibited complete strategic ambiguity. And that needs to translate itself into a longer horizon. We need to go the long route because what we have achieved today is just an antibiotic shot, but the main disease has not gone out. Right. I will now not take all questions. For those of you who asked so many questions, start questions, and those who joined as members, my thanks to all of you. I'm honored that with your super stickers and everything. But I will take three questions which I found very interesting. And I'll just read out all three questions. I'll flash. And I request all our panelists to spend a couple of minutes on their response to all three questions together so that we don't, because I think it needs a holistic thinking. Today is a day where we need to do holistic thinking. That is why we have so many brilliant minds out here. Okay, the first question which comes up is, Op Sindoor is still on. In future conflict, China, which is an all-weather ally of Pakistan, will play a major visible role. How do we counter them? What are your views? This is something which Marshal Choudhury did refer to, but I think this is the overhang under which we have to function. So this China-Pak alliance, how do we counter them, is something we need to talk of. The second question, the synergy we saw these 4 days of conflict emphasizes that the theater command implementation needs to be hastened. So the entire business of synergy and theater command has this operation given us the sheet anchor on which we can build or theater command system? That's the second question. And the third question, which is very interesting, which did come with General Hasnain did speak of. He says, "What's the further strategy of India with Russia, US, with Russia, especially with USA showing its true colors? But this war, India knows also who's with us. What are your views?" So the Russian angle and the international opinion. I think these three things, which if you could, we could dwell on a couple of minutes each, and then we'll sum up the whole story. I'll tee off with General Bhatia. Sir, if you could give your views on these three issues.
I think let me pass it on to Gen Ata. He's given a very excellent analysis. Please continue. I'd rather listen and learn.
Okay.
Okay. And I have to peel off exactly at 9 because I have to join DTV at 9. So I will give you my views on this. Of course, the first question on issue of China and how will we counter China, General Bhatia is the best person to tell you more. But I think there's no two ways about it that we have to just continue to balance our focus. We were completely focused on China and the northern borders up to 2020 in particular. And we had this awkwardness of completely switching off from the West. You know, our scanner somehow just left, the radar was just lifted from Pakistan. Although we went back very quickly and we I think responded very adequately in the required time frame. But still, I do think it must have taken a little more time to understand things. We need to balance our understanding on multi-front domains that we have to fight. The second thing is, we got to look, just like we have done it this time, it's not necessary to cross borders. The nature of warfare is changing, as we have seen. And I'm sure Air Marshal Choudhury will speak more on this. This is something that we will have to look at the northern front also. We can't just think of territory, going across territories, capturing territories, putting boots on ground everywhere. We will have to see it in terms of China. What are the lessons that we have learned from the Pakistani front which can be applied to the northern front? And dare I say, there's something opening up on the eastern front too, although I don't think that will ever translate into some kind of a threat of that nature. But I hope people there are observing what has happened on the western front of India here, because that should be a reasonable deterrence for people that you don't require boots on ground, you don't require 30 divisions to counter 7, 8, 9, 10 divisions, right? So I think an overall focus on the northern border, balanced out, the same technologies, more wargaming will have to be gone into. You can't lift your eyes from there. The threat is there. Diplomatically, you may achieve anything. Economically, you may achieve anything as far as relations with China are concerned. Theater commands. I am not as it is too convinced about the whole system. But having said that, I don't really think the theater command system was tested here in any great way. Yes, we only had the Air Force actually operating, and an element of the army which operated was the air defense. The boundary-wise theaters, if you really look at it, I mean, it was hardly tested as such. Yes, jointness came in very well. The jointness in terms of, at the CDS level, overall between the commands, it worked extremely well. I'm not sure how many lessons we can really learn from here, but yes, the steps to go on is a very good work in progress. I'm not neutralizing or negating it completely. It's good work in progress. But it reinforces, to my mind, the Air Force's original concept, which said centralization of forces. Centralization of forces is the answer. And you saw the centralization of forces here. It was not a question of frittering away resources, air resources anywhere, right? That may still give us a lot of answers, and I do think that this whole adoption of the theaterization system may receive a pushback, pending much more consideration. My last question on future diplomacy with the United States and Russia. We have no options except, let's not imagine that because we fought a 3 day successful war, the dynamics of geopolitics around the world have changed. That's not happening, right? We can still be pressurized a lot by the United States. We should still seek to be strategic partners of the United States. We should still continue to retain our special relationship with Russia. We should maintain our balance. We should still continue to depend on Russia as far as our inventory of weapons and equipment is concerned. All this must continue. These are normals. There is no new normal as such in this. For people to think that everything has to be reimagined, I don't think that is necessary. You do have to understand the realities that when it comes to crunch situations, people you have thought will support you may not support. You should be prepared for that and work on those contingents. But that does not mean that any of these countries which have not come to your assistance at that time are unfriendly towards you. I'll stop there.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, Air Marshal Choudhury. Your views on these three issues.
Sorry for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Future conflict, China-Pak alliance. I think it was brought out. We had de-hyphenated ourselves from Pakistan, focused on China, and I have an old saying which I firmly believe: the relationship with China and Pakistan is like the bull and the bear. The Chinese treat us. They're bullish. They want to toss us out of the way, whereas Pakistanis, want to embrace us in a bear hug because that gives them relevance. And their collusiveness is what we really are talking about here. It has been a sort of a gaming of Chinese and Pak. I won't say collusivity. This is out in the open. The kind of assistance they're provided. But one thing is very clear, given the geopolitics of it, China will not, sort of let loose its primary ally, a strategic ally, and will continue to support Pakistan strongly. And this is something which will come up, because something we need to bear in mind, and I'll just touch on one aspect which is brought out on the aspect of the media. Our media, Indian media, I'm afraid, does not really have the credibility internationally, and this is a fact. Not helped any bit in this time, especially with the loud, strident noises made. Do remember, the US and UK have traditionally sided with Pakistan historically, and they go back a long time. And the US will continue to use Pakistan, as a strategic option, keep it there. So what finally does come out is the fact that Pakistan has done a marvelous job balancing the US and China for its strategic interests. And that is something we need to bear in mind. China is watching this very closely. It has not fought a conflict since Korea. This conflict is something very close to home because the adversary is common. It will take away a great amount of lessons. And this I want to bring out because the PLAF's transformation actually has been pretty amazing. From the time they watched the Gulf War, they have changed their entire Air Force from a legacy system to a much modern one, which has actually got the US Air Force worried. In fact, the US Chief of Staff had actually, Mark Walsh, had about in 2019, way back in 2019, and said by 2030, the Chinese Air Force will be larger than the Americans. And that worries them no end. Because at the end of the day, this is what is going to pan out. And look at the way the PLF is already leveraging its capabilities in Taiwan and South China Sea, and adding to the vertical dimension over the maritime domain, which it is trying to push the Americans out of the first island chain, most certainly, and probably stretching it all the way to the second island chain. So PAF and PLAF, or Pakistan and China closeness and interaction, is something I think the only way we need to refocus on is building and strengthening our deterrence. And that is something which had slipped from our radar for quite some time. We had invested too much, I won't say too much, but overly in diplomacy and on economic progress. I think we need to get a hard call and bring back that the military instrument needs to be strengthened. So that is the first takeaway. On the aspects of theater command, I will, theater command whole construct, I think, wherein at a point, frankly, the Air Force was made out to look like a spoiler, but the real Air Force's concern was fact of just this. Today, see the way all the resources have been brought in, irrespective of which base and which command they operated from, to apply their whole air power synergistically. And this will be especially critical when we talk about two adversary and multi-front situation, with Pakistan and China. And this is something we need to bear in mind. The enormous flexibility which the air power has in being able to work easily between commands across the theaters, across terrain. It is actually, and I want to make this statement here in a very simple manner. This is not an Indian problem only. Every air force and military army in the world has faced this, especially the US in the past. So this is something we need to bear in mind, that the army looks at organizations in a more structured manner, whereas the Air Force's way of operating is a little more diffused. So I think the main thing to take away from this is that we need to shift away from an what should I say, structural construct, focusing too much of it on it, to bring in more strategic agility in the theater, whichever construct you call it theater command or whatever organization you need, it has to be strategically agile. And that is the most important takeaway I think we need to bear in mind in the future. An aspect of international on the aspects of, do we need to change our outlook? Frankly, one factor will remain, that we have a long way to go in our to be able to convincingly shape international perceptions in our favor. That is something will remain. It will always be a fact that in the India, if it has to go into a conflict, will always be going it alone. And that is something we can't wish away. So what we have to be, again, I'll bring in the word agility. We have to be agile in our geopolitical outlook, which I think we have shown a fair amount of agility and flexibility, unlike the hardwired approach of our geopolitics, which has been especially undertaken by the MEA. We have to grab every situation or strategic opportunity or window which opens up for us, and that is how we have to look at the whole approach. So I think I'll end here.
Oh, thanks a lot, sir. I think you gave some valuable ideas. We've run out of time. I wouldn't take other the things. I would like to thank all gentlemen who came and gave their valuable ideas based on their extensive experience, right, and putting across a lot of points. The short thing is that, has Pakistan learned its lessons? No, it has not. Will Pakistan learn some new lessons out of this? Yes, it will. The lessons it will learn will be inimical to India. And that is what we have to look out for in future. I'll not go about summarizing. I'll leave that to General Gautam Moorthy. Request General Gautam Moorthy, sir, to give you a short summation and end this webinar.
I think there's a connection problem again. But if you can
Your
hear
voice
me,
is clear, so you can speak.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, General Shankar.
Oh, just as he said, his connection was a little problematic. He's gone off. Right, not an issue. On behalf of everyone from Casa, I would like to thank General Gautam Moorthy, General Ata Hasnain, Air Marshal Choudhury, who's just next to me, and General Vinod Bhatia for having participated in this wonderful discussion. Varied ideas, and it's a long discussion, and it would test our ability to even retain what he has said. So I will put out excerpts of this thing slowly so that you get bites in about 10 to 15 minutes of each in the next few days. Thank you. Good evening, and Jai Hind to all of you. And Jai Hind to Air Marshal Choudhury also. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.